have fallen on the Baltimore Orioles. I don't even know what to say about this. I've called it the New York Nightmare. That's my hashtag for it. The New York Nightmare, and it's continuing at this point. We'll see if they can stop the bleeding, and Chris Tillman could be a part of that later today in the Bronx. Luke Jones joins us right now live via satellite to discuss. Well, Luke, if we were discussing the Orioles' offense, this would be a really short segment now, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be, and I mean, it's one thing to talk about struggling. I mean, they've clearly been, they're 3 for 33 with runners in scoring position since the All-Star break ended, but this team needs to get healthy. I mean, you just look at the lineup they trotted out there Wednesday night. You have Joey Rickard leading off. You have Nolan Reimold in the lineup. You have Ryan Flaherty in the lineup. You have Caleb Joseph in the lineup. I mean, this is just Adam Jones left the game with some back spasms that he downplayed afterwards, but we'll see how that plays out over the next couple days. This team right now is playing very much shorthanded, and look, I'm not going to excuse the guys that are in the lineup. They're still major league hitters, and they still need to be able to come through in some situations, and clearly Flaherty and Reimold and Pedro Alvarez had some chances on Wednesday night. They're not getting it done, but it's really tough when you're playing down 3 or 4 starters right now like the Orioles are, with Manny Machado being the latest to fall ill. Buck Showalter wasn't at the game on Wednesday night. This is just a situation, as you said, a nightmare, and just get the hell out of New York at this point. Get home, get it to sleep in their own beds, and hopefully get some of these guys healthy, because it has just been an absolute nightmare of a series in the Bronx.
Well, Luke, I tweeted on Wednesday night. I said, look, if this were their lineup, they would lose 90 games. They probably would lose 100, especially if John Russell's managing, and you put any stock into the fact that Buck's a better manager, right? So, I mean, what we saw on Wednesday night, it really isn't the 2016 Orioles, so you kind of have to look at it the way you looked at, Ryan Mallett, quarterback. Oh, that's right, they won. But you know what I mean? I mean, it's not that's not real. If that were the real team, just mail it in and go home like we did for 14 years around here, right? I mean, that team last night could not win, period.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they can win some games.
Not with Dylan Bundy starting and Giovanni Gallardo. I mean,
right. I mean, but you just made the point. I mean, it was, and I even thought that watching the game. Really, before the game, I even saw the lineup, and other than saying, okay, well, you have a reverse lock situation, maybe, and knowing that baseball, that even the worst team in the league will beat the best team in the league at sometimes at least. But I mean, it felt very 2015. Ravens-esque. I mean, it just
fair enough.
You look at that lineup, and certainly give some credit to Michael Pineda, who's had some success against the Orioles in the past, even when they've had their full allotment of hitters. So I think you keep that in mind. Clearly, they couldn't lay off the slider to save their lives on Wednesday night, and you just look at
awful pitch selection throughout the lineup. And I know some of these guys don't get a lot of ABs, right? So they get in there, they're all keyed up, team's in a slump, they want to be a hero. But boy, oh boy, I mean, there were some that when you go back and these guys break down the film of their at-bats, that can't be a good conversation, right?
Oh, no, not at all. And really, I mean, one of the at-bats that really stuck out for me was J.J. Hardy in the 6th inning. I mean, you could just tell. It looked like one of those at-bats where you're pressing. And when you're 3 for 33 with runners in scoring position over your first 6 games after the All-Star break, you are going to press. I mean, that's human nature. I mean, Buck Showalter, even though he wasn't there to be asked about it after Wednesday's game, he would say, yeah, they're definitely pressing. I'd kind of hope they'd be pressing when you're going through that kind of a run. So, as you said, I mean, as frustrating and painful, and I think it was one of those where you're watching that game, you feel like a glutton for punishment. But as you pointed out,
it was either that or the convention. So
right. Well, but
I haven't bought a Netflix subscription yet, Luke. So
you might be leaning in that direction though before too long. But I think you have to have some perspective here to say, okay, well, this team overall for the better part of 4 months has swung the bat really, really well. You knew that they would cool off a bit from the record-setting June that they had. Problem is, essentially everyone has cooled off. I mean, you have 1 or 2 guys who've been okay swinging the bat. Scope has been okay swinging the bat since the second half started. Hardy swung the bat okay since the second half started, but not a whole lot beyond that. So one, they need to get healthy. And, the good news is you're not talking about any season-ending injuries here. You've had guys that are banged up, with Wieters day-to-day with the foot. Hyun-Soo Kim's on the DL with the hamstring, but they backdated that to the Sunday before the break. He shouldn't be gone too long. And, in the case of Davis and Machado, you want to get them healthy, and you cross your fingers that no one else falls ill here because, it's clear this has been something that's knocked some of these guys on their ass for about 24 hours, and then they feel kind of weak after that for a couple of days. So, from what I understand, Buck talked about this in St. Petersburg in the Rays series. Sounds like Britton and Brock had it over the All-Star break, so sounds like they brought, whatever they got in San Diego, which, imagine that of all places, San Diego, to get sick.
It's almost like Legionnaire's disease or something now. Like everybody's got it, and it really does speak volumes. You're around the team all the time. Clearly, I'm not anymore. But they do kind of live on top of each other 165 out of 180 days, and they do sweat a lot, and they do hug a lot, and they throw a lot of chips around, and they're drinking out of water bottles, and, they're riding on planes together. I guess it stands to reason if, you and I have traveled together into a hotel on a road trip where one of us gets sick and gives the other one a cold. So I can't imagine that this doesn't happen a little bit more weirdly and more often. But certainly this week in New York, it's got Buck for crying out loud, right?
Yeah, it's clear, whatever it is, it's clearly been brutal. So it's something, you're right. You almost are amazed it doesn't happen a little bit more often. And, keep in mind, colds and more minor ailments that you can still play with. Guys.
But airplanes also and hotel. I know all that with my wife's illness about immune issues, but and illness and not shaking hands with people and all that kind of stuff. But, there really is a point where these guys do live on top of each other, especially at Fenway Park if you've been in the visitors' clubhouse.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But, and keep in mind, just because we don't hear about things doesn't mean that guys aren't constantly dealing with ailments, whether you're talking about, bumps and bruises or, just minor ailments, saying after a game that someone was under the weather, and they played through it. So, again, we're not making excuses here. The guys that are in the lineup have to swing the bat better. Nolan Reimold's still in the major leagues. Ryan Flaherty's still in the major leagues. Caleb Joseph, who has been a colossal disappointment with the bat this year after swinging the bat respectably the last couple years in place of Matt Wieters. These guys are on a major league roster for a reason. And until Wednesday night, they had been on a first-place major league roster. Orioles falling behind the Red Sox by a half game. But, they're going to break out of it. But at the same time, when you are missing really 4 starting caliber players in your lineup, it is going to be difficult. You do have a smaller margin for error. And, I think the disappointing thing, and look, I'm not saying Yovani Gallardo was great. He gave up 4 earned runs over 7 innings, but that was his deepest start in over a year. You'd have to go back to late June of 2015 for him to go 7 innings. And, I think, especially you go back to the inning where he loaded the bases with nobody out. And I half wonder if that was a product when he walked back-to-back hitters, walked McCann and Teixeira. I wonder if that was a product of feeling, oh no, it's 2-0. If I give up another run, this thing's going to be over because my offense isn't scoring. I think there's just a natural...
It's not just my offense isn't scoring. It's just Chris Davis is not coming up to bat next inning or Machado, right? This is what the team looks like without Machado, without Dave, without the real players, and Adam Jones. This would become a pretty bad outfit pretty quickly, right? Without those guys in the lineup.
Yeah, and we'll see how this plays out in the finale today with Tillman taking the hill this afternoon. But, you'd be looking at Bourbon replacing Adam Jones, who was just called up from Double-A to fill in because they're playing shorthanded with Kim going on the DL a couple of days ago. So, the good news is I know John Russell said Chris Davis is going to try to play. I know he took some batting practice on Wednesday. It just zapped him of all of his strength. And, this is a tough game when you're at 100% to try to play when you're under the weather. Not an easy thing. So, hopefully they get a couple of these guys back. Hopefully no one else goes down.
The Adam Jones thing has to be of a concern because it didn't look right. None of it looked like he's going to be playing today.
Yeah, and I know he said after the game that he's going to play and kind of brushed it off. Back spasms can be a very minor thing that lasts, a day or two and you're fine, or it can be something that lingers. I mean, it's tricky. So, as much as you don't want to get swept in the Bronx, you don't want to lose Adam Jones for 3 weeks. So I think you have to be very careful there. If it comes down to it, if they lose today because they still don't have these guys back, the season's not over. You go home and you lick your wounds for 24 hours, and then you get back out there. But, man, this has been a rough go of it from a health standpoint and from a bat standpoint. And I think the disappointing thing is, look, the starting pitching hasn't been terrific over this stretch, but they've had a couple starts where certainly Gausman on Monday night, more than good enough to win. Tuesday night where Worley wasn't able to go along. Okay, I mean they gave up some runs in that game, didn't pitch very well out of the bullpen, but on Wednesday night, Gallardo, if you tell me he's going to go 7 innings and even tell me that he's going to give up 4 runs, most times I'll take that and say, yeah, I think this team has a good chance to win under that scenario, and you're not going to blow up your bullpen in the process. So frustrating to get a couple, let's say at least acceptable starts, in the case of Gallardo, and better than that with Gausman, and have nothing to show for it in the win column.
Luke Jones is here. We are talking all things Orioles baseball, Birds, and the Yankees 105 at what they call the Stadium in the Bronx. Then home, of course, to take on yet another first-place team. It remains to be seen how long the Orioles can hover around first place. It'll be Bauer and Bundy, and then on through the weekend. And Gausman's going to go on Saturday against Tomlin. It's uncanny that the at-bats, the key at-bats in Wednesday's game, and what was a tight game at the time, went to Flaherty, right? A 217 hitter, right? I don't know what your expectation level is, but I know the internet crashes every time that happens, right?
Yeah, and I mean, you just look at the box score. I mean, it speaks volumes. I mean, one, the Orioles didn't have a ton of opportunities, but they had some. And it seemed like they all fell to the bottom of the order. And you look at the bottom of the order from Alvarez on down, 2 strikeouts apiece. Hardy was the only one who collected any hits. But Reimold and Flaherty both had some big opportunities, and they could not cash in. And, as you said, realistically speaking, what are your expectations? Well, you don't expect guys like that to continue, to consistently come through. But at the same time, if they're going to be on the roster, they're on the roster for things like this. When you have a couple guys who either need a day off or are sick, or whatever the scenario might be that leads to them being in the lineup, but you got to be able to deliver. And if the Orioles get scratch a couple runs across the plate early in this one, maybe it's a different story. And certainly you're not as inclined to go quite as long with Gallardo. Maybe you turn it over to, Brad Brock or someone like that in the 7th or 8th inning. But it just, you don't score runs. It's a pretty simple explanation.
Yeah, 0 runs never wins a baseball game.
Yeah,
period. So.
As I joked late Wednesday night, it's not a good thing for the Orioles when I ate as many crabs on Wednesday night as they've scored over their last 5 games.
It's been a rough week in the Bronx, and the Orioles looking to avoid the broom, the 4-game broom on the way back to take on the Cleveland Indians, and the Colorado Rockies come in next week. One thing I want to point out, Luke, and really nothing to do with New York today, but more when they get home, given their health, given they're wobbling right now. It's that time of the year. We always talk about dog days of summer, baseball idiom and all that stuff. It's going to be 100 degrees pretty much for the next week around here, right? So, the big flies, the big boppers, the 310-foot fly ball that suddenly becomes a 3-run home run, all of that stuff's going to happen here over the next week. It's going to be hot as hell. They're giving those Palmer jerseys away. It's going to feel like it's 115 in the bowl of the stadium on Sunday at 1 o'clock, man.
Yeah, it's not going to be fun in that regard, but that's part of the schedule. Especially you get the late July and August in Baltimore. I mean, you're going to have some series where it's going to be just brutal. So again, I guess if you're looking for a silver lining from a health standpoint, these guys should get back to Baltimore at a reasonable time. on Thursday night.
Hydrate. Just like for you next week out in Owings Mills. Hydrate, man.
No doubt about it. Hydrate and get some rest. Some of these guys who, and let's face it, there's probably a couple guys who have gotten this maybe to a lesser extent and are trying to plug through too. Again, everyone's going to deal with injuries. Everyone's going to deal with some sicknesses and some times where you're not feeling right physically. So we don't want to want to excuse them for the last few games, but it's very simple. When you're missing all-star caliber players the way they are, you're going to struggle to win, just like we saw certainly last year with the Ravens down the stretch. When you're missing real football players, you get a silly vibe to what's going on very quickly.
I can't call them the first-place Orioles anymore, can I?
You can't, but hey, a half game out, and this.
It was fun while it lasted. I did it for a couple weeks. It brought me great joy, Luke.
Oh, no doubt. Well, but at the same time, this team's still 13 games over 500, and Boston's been playing really well of late. But you look around baseball. As much as we're talking about the Orioles not playing well right now, the Texas Rangers are a team that looked like they were the absolute class of the American League for a good portion of the first half. They've really struggled.
Dude, Houston's got to be playing like 700 ball over some period of time or something, right?
It's not over some period of time. It's been since the Orioles went there in late May. That was really the spark plug for them. And I think a lot of people thought that maybe they wouldn't be able to win the division or anything like that. But I think everyone thought that they were better than they had showed. I was very surprised to see that team. I think they were 11 games under 500 at one point, and they played a lot better.
Yeah, I want to check that out because they're 51-44, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, man, they were awful in April, really, really awful. So the split has to be insane for what they've done, right?
Yeah, I like I said, I am almost positive. You go back to that sweep that the Orioles suffered down there back in late May.
They were 17-28. Is what they were at the time. 17-28 on May 23rd. The Orioles came in on the 24th. And that makes them, 34-16 is what they've been.
Yeah. It's and remember, those were all close games. Two of them were one-run losses. The one, if you recall, was I think in 13 innings. And that was the turning point for the Astros. So, I think it offers plenty of perspective that even right now, as we're talking,
I hope New York's not the turning point for the Orioles.
I was just thinking that. I'm hoping it's, one, not the turning point for the Yankees getting back in this race, which I'm still very skeptical about their long-term viability.
Oh, yeah. This has been a show for them to deal these guys, and if they don't deal them, right? What was not to like about Pineda or Nova in this series? What was to like about them the first 90 days of the year, right?
Exactly. So, you always have the ebbs and flows of a season. Just like I said, the Texas Rangers are struggling right now. The Giants, who have been so good in the National League.
But those uniforms look great. Oh, didn't they look great? Come on.
Did.
They look great.
But they've lost 5 in a row now. So, you're going to have stretches like this. The key is trying to minimize the damage. And, the good news for the Orioles, regardless of what happens in the finale in the Bronx, they're going home, and this is a team that's played 33-14 at Camden Yards this year. So, regardless of opponent, which clearly they're going to be facing a good team this weekend. They're still in better shape coming home than it would be if this road trip were to continue, because these guys need some home cooking and to sleep in their own beds and try to get well.
All right, well, get them home. Probably not in first place anymore, but get them home. Indians coming to town. Luke and I will be monitoring all things Orioles baseball all afternoon as well as all weekend long. You can reach Luke at WNST.net, as well as at Baltimore Luke on Twitter. I am me on Twitter. We are us on Twitter. Nasty at WNST.net reaches me 24 hours a day from anywhere with any questions, complaints, criticisms, comments. I'll take it all. Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, and all those places, including the Buy a Toyota audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world. Download, listen live, listen when you want, where you want, take it with you. And, of course, the morning newspaper goes anywhere you go, 7 a.m. It arrives in your email inbox free of charge and powered up by Planet Fitness. Last but never least, breaking news, always first on the WNST Tech Service. That is powered up by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. And Dennis will be here this afternoon from 3 until 5. I'm Nestor. This is WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.